Hello boys and girls, my name's Jo and I've come to read you a story. Now today's story is one of my favourites, and believe it or not, this is one of my books from when I was little, so it's very, very old. This book is called Rumpelstiltskin, and it's all about this little man here and how naughty he is. So let's start. Once upon a time, there was a poor miller who had one beautiful daughter. One day, the king sent for the miller. When the miller stood before the king, he was rather frightened. Instead of remaining quiet, the foolish man said the first silly thing that popped into his head. "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold," he said. And look, there's the king on his throne, and there's the miller who came to visit him. "Your daughter is indeed clever if she can do as you say," answered the king. "Bring her to me tomorrow and we shall see." The next day, the miller took his daughter to the king's castle. The king led the girl into a room that was almost filled with straw. The only other things in the room were a stool, a spindle and some reels. There's the king and the girl and the spinning wheel in the background. Spinning wheel's a big part of this story. "Now set to work," said the king, "and if by tomorrow morning you have not spun this straw into gold, you must die." At these words, the king left the room and locked the door behind him. He's a very greedy king, isn't he? The miller's daughter sat down on the stool and gazed at all the straw. She didn't know what to do. She had no idea how to spin straw into gold. As she thought about the next morning, she grew more and more afraid. At last, she hid her face in her hands and wept. She doesn't know what to do, does she? It's terrible. All at once the door flew open and in came the strangest little man she had ever seen. "Good evening, Mistress Miller," said the tiny man. "Why are you crying?" "Alas," replied the girl, "I have to spin all this straw into gold and I do not know how to do it." And there's the little man, look. And if you remember, that's the little man that was on the front of the book, isn't it? "But I do," said the mannequin. "What will you give me if I spin it for you?" "My necklace," replied the girl. The little man took the necklace and sat down in front of the spinning wheel. I think he's going to be a baddie. What do you think? Whir, whir, whir. 3 times round and one reel was full. The mannequin put on another reel. Whir, whir, whir. 3 times round and the second reel was full. And so it went on all night. By morning, all the straw was spun and all the reels were full of gold, whereupon the little man disappeared. There he is, look. That's called a spinning wheel. And that's how people can make wool as well out of sheep wool. At sunrise, the king arrived. He was astonished and more than delighted to see so much gold. Yet he was not satisfied. The sight of the gold only made him more greedy. He took the miller's daughter to a second room, much larger than the first one. It too was full of straw. Oh dear. So we've got a greedy king and a naughty little man, haven't we? Again, the king told the girl that if all the straw was not spun into gold before the next morning, she must die. Once more, when she was left alone, the girl began to cry. In a moment, the door flew open and the mannequin stood before her. "What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold?" asked the tiny man. "The ring on my finger," replied the miller's daughter. The mannequin took the ring and sat down before the spinning wheel. He spun straw all night until all the reels were full of gold. Then once more he disappeared. The king arrived at sunrise, and yet again he was delighted to see all the gold. Yet still he was not satisfied. He led the poor girl to a third room, even larger than the other two. It too was full of straw. This time the king said to the girl, "Spin this straw into gold before morning, and you shall be my queen." I don't know what makes him think she wants to be his queen. What do you think? When the girl sat alone weeping, the queer little man appeared for the third time. "What will you give me if I spin the straw for you this time?" he asked. "Alas, I have nothing more that I can give," sobbed the poor girl. Oh dear, it's not going to turn out well for her, is it? "Then promise me that if you become queen, you will give me your first child," said the mannequin. "I may never become queen, nor yet have a child," thought the girl, so she promised. At that, the mannequin once more spun all the straw into gold. When the king arrived early the next morning, he was overjoyed at the sight of all the gold. He reminded himself that not only was the miller's daughter beautiful, but also that she'd brought him great riches. So he kept his promise. He married the miller's daughter, and she became his queen. The queen was very happy living in the royal castle. She forgot all about the little mannequin who had spun the straw into gold. A year after they were married, the king and queen had a lovely baby. They were both filled with joy. A few days later, the mannequin suddenly appeared in the queen's bedroom. "Now, give me what you promised," he said to the queen as he pointed to the sleeping baby. The poor queen was horrified and clutched the baby tightly to her. Oh, I think she's going to regret that promise she made. The queen offered the mannequin all the riches in her kingdom if only he would release her from her promise. The tiny man refused them all. "A human child would be dearer to me than all the riches of your kingdom," he said to the queen. Dear me. At his words, the poor queen wept so bitterly that the tiny man took pity on her. "I will give you 3 days," he said, "and if in that time you can guess my name, you shall keep your child." That night the queen lay awake, trying to remember every name she had ever heard. Oh, she can't sleep, look, because she's really worried. In the morning, the queen sent for a messenger. She told him to ride all over the country, collecting all the boys' names he could find. When the little man came the next day, the queen repeated a long list of names. But after each name, the mannequin said, "No, that's not my name." The next morning, the queen sent out her messenger to another country. He came back with a long list of the queerest names she had ever heard. The queen repeated all of these strange names to the little man on his second visit. After each name, he shook his head and said, "No, that's not my name." The poor queen was in despair. On the third day, it was very late when the messenger returned. "I've not been able to find one new name," he said. "But as I came to a high mountain at the end of the forest, I saw a little house. In front of the house, a fire was burning." "The queerest little man was hopping and jumping around the fire," went on the messenger, "and this is what he was singing. Although today I brew and bake, tomorrow the queen's own child I'll take. This guessing game shall never win, for my name is Rumpelstiltskin." Oh, he's given the game away, hasn't he? On hearing this, the Queen clapped her hands with joy. When the mannequin arrived, she pretended she still did not know his name. Is your name Twinkletoes? She asked. No, that's not my name, he replied. Is it Shagribanda? She asked. No, that's not my name, he replied. Does it happen to be Rumpelstiltskin? Oh, the mannequin was furious. A witch has told you, a witch has told you, he shrieked as he stamped his foot in anger. He stamped so hard that his right leg went through the floor. At that, his anger increased. He seized his leg with both hands and began to pull with all his might. He pulled so hard that at last his leg came out of the hole. Then Rumpelstiltskin stumped furiously out of the room and was never heard of again. And that, as I wrote when I was little, is the end. So what did we think of that story, boys and girls? Was Rumpelstiltskin really a baddie? Or had the Queen made a promise and she should have kept it? What do you think? Right then, now it's time for you to get cosy in your pyjamas and your nighties. Get really snuggly and get ready for bed. Have a lovely night's sleep and get ready for a brand new day tomorrow. Bye-bye for now, everybody.